Hello, EDL 695. This is Adam Hall, and I will be discussing today kind of my understanding and analysis of executive coaching based on the reading and materials provided for this module. I have to start off by saying I have very limited experience with executive coaching. I've heard of it as a thing. I've got some. I have a brother-in-law who actually talked to me a little bit about it and how he uses it in his work. He works for Bank of America and is a fiduciary, so he works with lots of money and lots of really great staff who try to make others money and keep the business profitable. So that is really my foundation. In terms of other coaching, I have a few years of experience of coaching youth lacrosse, and so I have worked with 6, 7, 8, 9, and 12-year-old young men and boys around their skill set and developing them into young, hopefully good men through the coaching experience and mentoring experience. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I hope to set a foundation to express my understanding of this work and kind of how exciting it really is. I learned quite a bit that I didn't know about coaching and the impacts on coaching strategies. So my outline today will be the foundation of coaching, a little bit of the history, though it's not nearly as robust as the mentoring foundation that I provided in the previous video. Principles of coaching, some things that I found really as core through the text and through the videos that were provided through Garvey et al. through the book Coaching and Mentoring, but also some of the videos that he shared, just kind of taking some of that insight. Differences in coaching and mentoring, I think that's a really important piece. Let me take a step back and say also how coaches guide, and using coaches as a guide, not just as a kind of end result focused initiative, but also how they do a lot more than that. And then the differences in coaching and mentoring and how they are really different and designed for different kind of practices and purposes. And types of emerging coaching techniques that I think are fascinating, that I would love to learn more about and hope to implement after doing some research on them. A little bit of personal reflection for this module, as well as some of the work that I've done in the coaching experiences I've had, and then just some takeaways. So again, simple outline, let's jump right in. I do want to repost my functional definition, and I hope to do this actually in the self-mentoring as well, to really ground this video in what my interpretation was after just some initial readings of this. And so I found that executive coaching is a professional relationship between one who has knowledge and insight in a specific area of expertise and shares this with an individual or team to achieve a set of goals. Really focusing in on this idea of it's solution focused, it's goal oriented. It tends to be somebody with insight, not just necessarily a sage or somebody with wisdom, though it could be. However, it's somebody who has a real skill set. This is often done through research-based techniques and is driven in proactive ways by return on investment mentality. So what I mean by this second part is it really is about what are other initiatives and research that's out there to really guide how we coach. So is it strengths driven? Is it positive? Is it gestalt? Is it situational? So really using multiple techniques to really guide individuals to get to that goal, really being a set finite expectation around this, as opposed to mentoring, which we'll discuss later, is much kind of more fluid. So some of the foundations that I found were important that I pulled from both DeHaan and Hughes, as noted in the bottom section here, but that it originated in ancient Greece, kind of connecting some of that language to Socratic dialogue, though there isn't really any direct connection to a lot of this foundation. We as scholars and folks who are looking at this have built those connections through what we perceive to be the realities of those people at the time. They were much more associative connections, not concrete. And that I think coaching is a really kind of unique reality in history, that it's really about striving for a consensus of what this actually looks like, because it's so vast and there's so many nuances to it. How do we find a real point to come together to say this is coaching? And when we're looking at coaching, saying this is coaching in the for-profit world, this is coaching for the non-profit world, this is coaching for the athletic realm, all these different pieces really come together and have similar ideas and similar structures. And so some of those similar structures and ideas are what I've proposed here. It is one of the most most affected by commodification of all the different strategies that we've looked at so far in the course. The coaching really has been brought because of its short-term, research-focused, outcome-driven, productivity-oriented kind of lens that's provided for coaching in the for-profit world, in the corporate world. But also because it's connected to money, it's very well researched. There's a lot of information out there, not just about life coaching or team coaching, but also around this executive and how do we kind of build executives and leaders and foster their success. One thing I think is extremely helpful with coaching is it tends to be short term, so we're talking about just a few sessions. Garvey et al. Kind of discusses this and goes into a little bit deeper focus on it, is that it really is about the short-term outcome expectation of this relationship. It's focused on return on investment, so focusing that we're going to pull a profit from this in the long term in some way. We're not going to lose a staff as quickly, or they're going to be a leader for us in the future. And that there's a belief that what is necessary to be successful already exists, which I think is fascinating compared to the mentoring, which is about developing and growing some pieces. This idea is that you have the tools, we've got the structure, now we just figure out how to make it work. That it's very future focused as opposed to reflective. It's limited reflectivity by the coach. It's more question driven. So a coach may not share about what their thoughts are, but question or redirect a thought of the coachee in this conversation. And again, it is about results. So what I think is fascinating about this is that coaching and mentoring, though they are so very different in a lot of ways, there are some underlying principles and practices that seem in the reading to really help facilitate success of both a mentoring and a coaching relationship. And those 5 are proposed here, where it's all about motivating. So how do you get that intrinsic motivation to guide the coachee or the mentee and really support them and give them kind of the rails to keep going forward on. And then giving them and developing solutions to problems, whether for mentoring it's that longer term bigger question, or for coaching that short term I need a guiding principle thought, or I need to just be challenged, or can I just practice this with you to get to that solution. That both of them really are question based, whether it be short term or long term, as noted before. That both the mentee and mentor should be empathizing with the needs of each other. The most successful relationships dialogue throughout all of the materials, especially around Garvey et al. And the coaching and mentoring, is how do we empathize? How do we make this the best experience for both parties to get the outcome or get the long-term relationship? And then redirect the negative. How are we going to redirect this person to make sure they're successful, to make sure that they're meeting quotas, to make sure that they are being motivated and supported in the right ways? And so differences in coaching and mentoring really I think are critical here, is that, as I've noted before, that I tried my best to create a dichotomy here. So forward thinking versus reflective. With coaching, it doesn't have to be an elder, but reflecting, it often is somebody who's an elder or a leader in the field. A short-term time frame for coaching versus more long-term commitment. Coaching is question-driven. Mentoring is about sharing insights and personal experiences for growth. Solution-focused ideas for coaching, and then empathy focus for mentoring, and kind of both, as I said earlier, those are core, but solution focus really does win out with the coaching dialogue. And then goal oriented versus growth oriented. Again, I think that there needs to be growth in both of these realms, but they do lean towards, in the research, these 2 realms. So the reason I showed this is not to reiterate the same points too many times, but there's such an important difference in the expectation that if somebody is being coached through an experience and what they actually need is more of a mentor and guide, there needs to be a reassessment and refocus of that. And I think having leaders and potential mentors or coaches understand these differences can provide those adequate resources to their subordinate, their mentee, or their coachee. So the things that I was really excited about that are outlined in the Garvey text that I thought were really, really fascinating was the history of team coaching and what we understand about it. The solution-based coaching model, cognitive behavioral model, Gestalt model, narrative model, and positive psychology model. And all of these, I think, are really excellent tools that any coach or mentor or even supervisor should be considering, because as we look at supervision, there's so many different realms of guided practices and principles that should be taken in. These, to me, these 6 were just really emerging, brilliant ideas that I reflect on kind of regularly now as a supervisor to say, I have a student who has a behavior that I really don't want them to continue to do, whether it's aggressive or it's seen as concerning or underwhelming, and working with them to change that cognitive behavior, how they think about how they think, how they work, and work with the team. And then having students and staff members that I really just want to build up because they're not feeling great about their work, they're doubting themselves. And so coming from a positive psychology of coaching, we're building them up and building their capacity is really my number one charge in the moment. And then moving on to a different coaching strategy because they may be right on the right track, but they're feeling and doubting themselves. Reinforcing the positive good things there, that to me is such a core piece of this. The others I think are extremely important because stop being in the moment. I have so many victims and survivors I work with in my work that I want to coach them and help them make decisions that I think really connecting them with themselves in the moment is key and crucial. And then narrative coaching through stories and storytelling. It's so authentic, and I think of tribal communities and indigenous communities and the histories of their narratives and the history of how they talk about leadership and success and support. That to me seems like a great strategy for folks who really do narrative work and focus their lives on storytelling and parts of their lives on storytelling. My reflection that I want to share this time is the layers that I've now considered with my coaching strategies, my coaching techniques, with my team of young men and boys that I work with on Sunday afternoons. And as I look through all these different pieces, and most of my coaching technique comes from modeled from other coaches and guiding principles that I hold value to, but I think of the foundation of my coaching is really focused on the skill building of the sport, but also the message and mentality of the player. So when we have coaching as a discipline, coaching as disciplinary action, that is a component of the position, but they're much larger. Dialogue is, what does it represent? What is this person modeling in the behavior? But also how are they supporting their young person that they're working with? So I think of scenarios where young men are on the field and they get into a fight or they commit a foul, and using those moments as teaching and really being in the moment and seeing what the negative impact is, so that they can make good decisions in the future and they can be a team player and a support and and have sportspersonship when they leave the field, that they're going to make good decisions with their families and that their message of what it means to be a good person, not just a successful athlete, do go hand in hand, that we're building capacity in humans, not just the athletic component. And so I've been thinking a lot about that and how I hope to implement some of these strategies into my coaching techniques once the season starts back up in a few weeks. Because I think of the positive psychology of reinforcing the good things they're doing, but also addressing appropriately and redirecting the bad things that are going on for them. So I hope to make a bit of a hybrid coaching methodology out of some of the things that I've learned in this course. So my takeaways before I run out of time this afternoon is really, I really think in the campus environments in which I work, in which I study, I think we need more coaching support in these environments and kind of running through this idea of how am I going to coach my staff, my students through these initiatives and through these goals. Because I do think that mentoring is a big part of this because it's so much more developmental, that coaching can be a part of this dialogue too, and I think it should be more effectively. For offices and programs that are very outcome driven or product driven, I think coaching should and really could flourish in these spaces. I have to admit that coaching, after all of this, the readings and the videos, I've realized that coaching is much more fluid. It is much more complex than my limited understanding of it walking in the space, and so that has been a huge learning and growth moment for me. That what I think I've learned most about is that through these dialogues and conversations with folks in these readings is those powerful moments of motivation are the true key to success when it comes to coaching. That not just on the field, but the staff member who comes back and needs that moment of motivation and needs that support from the supervisor is critical. Excellent guiding new practitioners. I think it's a good strategy for young professionals to start absorbing that they can coach their peers, they can coach each other, they can empower to be successful as units and as individuals. And I would love to see much more positive coaching approaches in my work, but also in my sports experiences. I would love to initiate some more of this dialogue with my fellow coaches. Thank you as always. I look forward to any dialogue that may come about from this, and I hope that everyone has a great week.